Alrighty, I'm on. You're on too, Andre.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm here chatting with Endre Hoffmann, and you and I we met would have been a couple of weeks ago now at a workspace opening in Parramatta.
Exactly, at a networking event.
Yep, at a networking event, and it was interesting. You know, we started getting into a bit of a conversation, and you know, obviously you introduced yourself and you mentioned that you were doing a bit of mind coaching and things like that. And I always find it very interesting when people are into that sort of stuff, because I think self-work or working on yourself, a lot of people don't actually spend that time in their lives to do that sort of thing. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, when you're young, you have so many other influences, whether it's your parents, your friends, or you have all these things that sort of keep you busy. And the only time that and especially if you grow up with siblings, right? Like if you've got siblings, you hardly have any alone time to yourself. It's only that moment when whether people, you know, move out of home and you finally got that space by yourself, or you move out yourself, that you start to realize, oh, you know, this is a little bit lonely. This is a little bit different, you know, and now the only person that you're surrounded with most of the time is yourself. And if you don't like yourself, it's a pretty poor place to be, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I have been on that journey.
Yep.
To finding self.
Yep. Okay, so let's bring it all back for everybody. So if people haven't already noticed, Andre's got a bit of an accent because you grew up in Hungary, correct?
Correct, in Budapest.
In Budapest. And so what can you tell me about, you know, I've never been to Hungary and I've never been to Budapest. So I guess if you can describe what was it like back then, you know, when you were growing up, and what do you remember?
When I was growing up, I remember there were a lot of fear and anxiety in people.
Anxiety. Yep.
Yes, I remember my grandparents are always being afraid of that they call this the black van showing up when someone was really talking out against the communist regime. Then they found themselves just one night, you know, just taken away in this black van, and then they never showed up again, and they found themselves in Gulag or in a work camp somewhere in Siberia, and then people never got to see them again. So there was this common level of fear in people to then keep to themselves, don't talk too much, don't share their views and ideas and opinions, because that can get you in trouble.
So as a child, so do you act like, were your parents very strict on things that, you know, they would want you to say or not to say?
Not really. This is my grandparents that I have experienced it, but my parents were quite outgoing, although they were building communism, because that was the ideology at the time. They were quite open in this very closed system, so it was a relative openness, and I think they found their ways to break out of their own boredom and anxiety, and we didn't even have passports. Like, they gave us passports that you can travel in 10 countries.
Yep.
Like a world passport that could allow you to enter into Western countries. That was like the biggest thing that you can get.
Yep. And so you had like a limited passport that could only get you into 10 or so countries.
Exactly. And you wouldn't even have been able to get more than 50 Deutschmarks, which is maybe 50 euros today. Every year you had to collect your own quote of, you know, foreign currency, then to travel every 5-10 years, when you collected enough per person, per each family. And then we gave it to one family who could travel to the West if they received their kind of permit to see their family, or whatever the justification or the explanation was why they want to travel West.
Yep.
That was very restricted, very limited as far as traveling and see the other side of the Iron Curtain.
And so then for you as a child growing up in that environment, like what were some of the memories that sort of impressed on you?
I mean, when we see people and families or kids who move back home to Hungary, and we've seen these jeans and colorful clothes, they really stood out.
Yep.
Like communist Hungary had, you know, three colors: black, navy blue, and brown.
Yep.
Pretty much, if you wanted to buy raincoats or gumboots, then they were made in, you know, neighboring countries,
Yep.
and there wasn't any fancy equipment on the shelves, and this was big. Like people stopped by with these people, and they wanted to buy off their clothes
Yep.
to then use it for themselves and wear it because this was flash.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, so a bit of jealousy of the other kids that had come back and they're wearing these flashy clothes. What was the schooling like? Do you remember much about school?
Yeah, schooling was in many ways, I believe, traumatic as I look back. And so the main message was, if you don't get good grades, you will be swiping the streets, and you will end up homeless. And this fear-based education has really traumatized a lot of kids. I remember, because learning Russian was mandatory. We had still Russian troops in the country until 1990. So we had to study Russian for 8 years in elementary school. And I remember the Russian teacher was slowly, you know, the register where all the names are and or marks, they slowly turned the pages, and we knew exactly who is on which page when they started to do the alphabetical order of moving the pages. And someone had to end up front of the white blackboard and you do an oral exam. And this was public humiliation at its best, because, you know, we were not really prepared. We hated the language.
Yep.
We didn't enjoy it. And the system was set up to catch you out. It was about catching what you don't know, how they could, even when we had written tests.
Yep.
You know, normally in the book you have a lot of information. You're able to, you know, read and learn most of the things. And then they were always putting some questions about small fonts or something that wasn't even in the book, to then somehow show you that you're just not good enough.
Not good enough. And so then, how did your parents respond to that kind of teaching? Like, I guess, were they happy with the schooling? I guess you couldn't really say much, but what was their sort of perspective? So when you came home with a mark, was their response positive or negative? Like, how did they sort of try and approach it with you?
Well, this is all they knew. And this was so natural to be in this kind of survival, stressful environment.
Yep.
That it didn't even occur to them that there could be another way. They just accepted this is how they teach us. I had a few, you know, not good grades. And I was told off to then, you know, get my act together and start to study. And study meant absolutely no. It's basically rehearsing.
It's rote learning
Stuff from a book.
Yep.
With no proper creativity or memory.
Yep.
Memory test.
Yep. Okay. And so then, like, what kind of place were you living in? Were you living in an apartment? Were you living in a house?
It was a 10-story housing estate.
Yep.
Long, you know, tall buildings, and we lived in the second floor of a skyscraper, I could say.
Yep.
And we had, you know, 3 little rooms, and this was the developed communist like future that they wanted people to move into, you know, the cities and become workers.
Yep.
And build communism. That was the ideology at the time.
So what did your parents do for work?
My mom was actually she worked in the Communist Party.
Oh, wow. So she actually worked in the Communist Party.
I would say she was a coordinator at this big state firm.
Yep.
Which was exporting wines. And she was this coordinator of the Communist Party towards, it's kind of a between person between the Communist Party and big companies, because there's a lot of things and coordination took place.
Yep.
Big big companies and between the Communist Party, because the idea was that there was one party, so and everyone had to be a member.
Yep.
So then the brainwashing could go on, and people could adopt these ideas and the ideology and get the badges of, I think it was called, I don't know, excellent worker, you know, the Stahanovist type of approach, when you can produce more. And that was the awards that people went for.
No, it's a structure that's built there to try and encourage behavior that you know takes you to achieving those kinds of rewards, right? So it's a funnel, right?
Exactly.
Like, you know,
that
you don't
quality.
you don't have a fork in the road. You've only got one direction to go, right?
Pretty much. I mean, I was lucky enough to have family not overseas. They lived in Germany because of my name is Hoffmann, and some of my family ended up with, you know, the Russian and the German front moving around in our country. They ended up in Germany because of their name. They were relocated before the Russians came in.
Yep.
And before the Iron Curtain was kind of sealed. So I knew there is a different type of life, and we have had phone calls from them, and sometimes they came.
Yep.
And that was always exciting because they brought these
Gifts.
Western chocolate and little goodies that we would never see otherwise.
So they would allow them to travel between the checkpoints on pretty much, you know, without restriction, or?
I think there was, again, this type of checking and allowing some of the families to kind of meet.
Yep.
If they had a good reason to come. And then the second part of the 80s, I think it started to ease off when this communism and socialism started to just disintegrate and collapse slowly.
Yep.
That eventually happened in 1991 with the Russian troops leaving the country.
Yep. Okay.
That was a big day.
Yeah. So then, you know, where were you at that particular time? Like, what do you remember of that day?
Well, what I remember is that, I attended elementary school from 1982 to 1990.
Yep.
That was before or in so-called communism.
Yep.
And then in 1991, I started my secondary school. And the books totally changed 180 degrees. What
Really?
we learned as a revolution has become a counter-revolution.
Yep.
And that was an absolutely different narrative.
So it just swung the opposite way.
Absolutely.
And so who came into power once the Russians decided to exit Hungary?
I don't remember now. There was a few parties, and then they started to kind of. There was an election, but in a lot of heads, although the Russian troops left, people were so terrified that they, like my grandparents, thought they will come back and they will just do the same kind of suppression that they did before.
Yeah. And
then it took them another 5-10 years before realizing, well, things are actually
changing.
And then clearly, you know, Western brands came into the country, like McDonald's. I was there in the first few queues. I stood 1.5 kilometers in a queue to get to eat a hamburger. That was such a big thing. I remember the first Adidas store in Váci Street, you know, CBD, Budapest, opened up. And I remember my parents didn't want to buy me an Adidas shoe.
Yep.
And from my saved money, I queued up for 2 or 3 hours to buy my first pair of Adidas shoes. So that was just lack of anything.
Yep. So, you know, why I'm curious about it is like, so you talk about like there was a massive change when you went to secondary school because of the change in government. So did that then change the way that the educators tried to teach you as well? Or was it still the same style, rote learning, everything was still, you know, lacking creativity, or did it change?
Only their style have not changed.
Yeah.
It remained the same. They could not, or they did not know any better.
Yeah.
Or different.
Yeah.
What really changed is, or are the materials, that the standard stuff that we were to learn.
Yeah.
And we had new languages available, German and English, and I did change from Russian.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And so then, from in secondary school, I guess, how would you describe yourself? And I wonder, was there a difference in you at primary school versus secondary school because of, it's a different environment, and then also, what you're learning is also counter to what you had been learning in primary school? Like, did that then cause you to have a lot of questions, trying to understand and make sense of it for yourself? Because if you get told to believe that this is the way things are for 6-7 years of your life, now there's a change in government, the narrative has changed. How does that impact you mentally, right? Like, because then it's like almost like the last 7 years, everything that you learnt, you need to throw it away. Is that how you felt, or?
Well, not everything, because physics
It
did
doesn't
not
change.
have
Yep.
serious breakthroughs or changes, but definitely anything to do with history and some of the subjects caused a confusion, and the confusion started in the heads of teachers who still, some just kept their old ways of teaching everything. They did not really started their new materials. They said, I'm just this old school teacher, and I will just do my things for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So even the teachers had different concepts to what they were about to teach. Like the national standard wasn't clarified or clear for the first few years. And we quite lucky in many ways in the Hungarian standards, because kind of for the first 8 years in elementary school, you learn a narrow or not too expanded version of almost everything that you learn in secondary school. And in secondary school, you go into more and more details, and we basically studied pretty much the same material, but more expanded,
More in
and
depth.
of course 180 degrees in some senses. Especially 20th century history has turned upside down.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. And then what about from together with your friends, right? What were those relationships like? Did that change in terms of like the kind of conversations you would have, after, the change in government as well? Or like, is it something that you guys would talk about? Because obviously, in the previous years, you couldn't really openly talk about things or discuss ideas, right? Because everybody would be scared that, the black van's going to come and take somebody away.
Well, we did have, like, with close friends in school, we did have honest conversations. It was more of the elderly who had these fears that they will be taken away. That really changed because that was a humiliation if you could not attend these youth, whatever organization it was, to then later on become a party member.
Yeah.
Because they have early on, elementary school, they really started to
Indoctrinate you.
and really install the right programming. And finally, there was a few kids who before got humiliated for not joining this youth organization have been kind of let go and able to just do their own things. There was more and more people who did not want to join the Communist Party. We did share a lot of things, and it has not really changed. I think there was just too much at once to deal with when we changed school, and then we had all these Western things coming in at home. There was a lot of privatization. They started to sell off and steal most of the that was a big handing out of private equity
Mm.
to some people who were connected to the party
Mm.
in the first few years. So some people got dirty rich.
Yep.
And
As a
ever
result of it.
since,
Yep.
yeah.
So then for your mum who was working in the party, how did that impact her job, you know, when the Russians withdrew?
Well, she lost it with losing communism as such, and she started a business, and it was a small grocery store.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up helping her in early mornings from about 4:30 a.m.
Yep.
And I was delivering, like bringing stuff into the store, and then I went to my school later on. But after 95, I was helping her business, and unfortunately, it was almost 24/7.
Yep.
And it was too small to scale or really earn serious money. So it was enough for us to get by.
Yep.
And get food on the table, but it was not a thriving adventure or a joint venture, because she had partners and it didn't turn out to be good. And my father has started a business on his own in plastic molding, plastic packaging, and he started about 1985 because they started to kind of allow private businesses with certain ways to start business, and it was very hard going. A lot of fights and anxiety and fears that he kept bringing home, and that's what we experienced in the house. I was so happy when he wasn't around.
So then, did you have any siblings, Andre?
Yeah, I have a sister. She was she's 2 years younger than me.
Yep. And so then for you guys, you know, growing up in that home environment, so, you know, when your dad would bring home these stresses and things like that, like what would be your standard response? Like how would you try and handle that situation?
I was trying to be invisible.
Yep.
To not get caught.
Yep.
Because he's been a fault finder. So if, let's say I done everything I could.
Yep.
Like taking out the rubbish and cleaning up, he just came around and he found something to really point out and pick on. And then again, I always felt not good enough, that I haven't done this or haven't done that. And at times when he couldn't find anything, he just made up something that I should have figured out to do. So kind of, I was so angry because in this situation, I could not win.
Yep.
And what I really wanted to win is his love.
Yeah.
And that never came. Whatever I've tried to play basketball. I became a national champion at age 12.
Oh, whoa, we got to talk about that. So,
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a whole other story, right? So when did you start playing basketball?
At age 7.
Okay.
Early on.
And so obviously it was through school, I'm guessing, or was it something that you...
No, it was a club.
Yeah, okay.
It was like crazy. 4 or 5 trainings a week, 1 or 2 games. At that time, I put my life into sports. That was me. I studied and went to trainings each day. We took the bus at age 8 all around Budapest, big city. Yep. But we went always in a crowd with my friends, and that filled up most of my days.
Yep. So so then with the basketball, how did you get to that stage where then at 12 you made in the national champion team? So
it's not the national champion team; it's the team that I played for.
Yep.
At that year.
Yep.
Has become number 1 in the country.
In the country, okay.
So I would say, I don't know how to explain this, but we won. We were the best team in Hungary. It's a country of 10 million people, so that was a big thing.
Yep.
But that did not really impress my dad.
Yep.
Then
so I don't think anything was going to impress him if that's not going to impress him, right?
Nothing. I had the good grades, and I went crazy running marathons and ice climbing and climbing Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Europe. Well, clearly he did not have love to give.
Yep.
Or he didn't have love for himself either.
So okay, I want to get to the ice climbing and all that. How about your sister? Was it the same relationship for her, or was it different?
She was not so vulnerable and attached to that love that I think I was always trying to get or gain. So she kind of was easier or let go on things. I think my father did pick me more to challenge and.
Do you think that's because you're the boy? Some and the reason why I say that is because I always remember back to the birth of my kids, right? So when Cadence, my eldest, so my first daughter was born, I had a really it was very emotional, obviously, and I had this overwhelming feeling of love, and and the feeling I would describe between Cadence and Harley is different because I think there's something primitive that comes out when you hold a daughter, and it made me really want to protect her. And I know that that's not actually you shouldn't always think about that as well, because at the end of the day, for a girl to grow up strong and resilient as well, she's going to need to experience life herself, right? So I can reflect on that and go, okay, even though I have these primitive instincts in me that wants to protect her and baby her and in everything that she does, there's also the rational side of me that goes, if I want to raise a resilient human being, that's not the best way to do it. And so, on the contrary, with my son, I had this feeling of, yes, it's a boy, proud dad kind of a thing. And you sort of feel like, oh, you want to toughen him up and make him tough and all this sort of stuff. But then, contrary to that, you still got to remember when he's three, right? Like the things that are important to him at 3 years of age is not being tough and being all those sorts of things. Like that will come with age and development. And likewise, he needs love and protection as well, because at 3, the world is a very scary place for a 3-year-old, right? So I always think about that, and I just wondered, whether, for your dad, he maybe he had those similar kinds of, primitive sort of instinct that, by being hard on you, that was his way of trying to get the best out of you.
You've got it.
Yeah.
And the proof, or I would say, because my father died about 6 years ago. I have to jump in time a bit.
Yeah, we can always come back. Yeah,
reply on this. This is an amazing question. I did have a medium.
Yep.
To kind of, because I could never have an honest conversation with my dad.
Yep.
So at age 35, he was telling me that when you grow up, mindset, when you grow up, you will understand why I was the way I was with you.
Yep.
So, I asked him, how far do I need to grow? Because I'm at age 35 now. So when would I be an adult to understand you? And we could never have an honest conversation about his ways and how he's limiting himself and the pattern of negative emotions, that limitation that he's running. So when he died, I decided to really contact him on the other side. And I have a few amazing people around me who are able to initiate this kind of conversation. And what you said is so true, because this is exactly what I asked. Why did you behave this way? Why you couldn't allow yourself to more love and have a proper relationship? And his answer was that you wouldn't have been so open and inquisitive and excited about the world, that you wouldn't have seen so much and you wouldn't have discovered yourself and also who you are if I did not act like that.
Yeah.
And that really, I believe, ties back to then what are we doing on earth. And I maybe I shouldn't take this discussion that way, but I think there is a kind of a plan, that a lesson or a set of challenges that seems like we are pressured or squashed by life early on, but that's so necessary to come out of that
For growth, right?
for growth and
Yeah.
to really find life purpose
Yeah.
and be able to connect with others and with ourselves first.
Okay. Well, I want to expand a bit more on that. So when you say, when you refer to the pressures helping you grow, like a lot of people I always find will say that they have these regrets, right? And for me, you know, when I look back on my life, I always say, you know, to be honest, I don't regret anything that I've done. The only thing I would say to a younger version of myself would be, you know, you just need to make those mistakes sooner so you could learn from them faster, right? Is that a similar perspective to what you think, or I guess, you know, how has that sort of shaped your own thinking when you reflect back on your life?
Well, it's a big question. To really look at this, I could probably have been faster in picking up on the recurring events to then realize I'm pushing hard something that is just not going to work.
Yep.
And if I had a mentor or a coach around me, which I didn't realize I need one, I had got much more out of life probably, or more enjoyment, happiness and peace.
Yep.
Rather than putting myself into these fairly hard and demanding situations and learn slow and through pain of being disconnected. How is my life ever going to make sense?
Yep.
And now building my business with 2 children behind me who I'm homeschooling.
Yep.
If I could have done this 10, 15 years ago and kind of setting myself up, then obviously I would be maybe a more connected, more inspiring person, and I would have more time to then share this knowledge and experience that I have had.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Like sometimes I wonder, you know, is it, and the reason why I wonder this is because, like, I've had people ask me, you know, Johnny, what's your idea of legacy, right? So what do they ask me, you know, like, what is this? Is this a legacy that you want to leave or something like that? And my initial response has always been, you know, legacy. What am I going to care about legacy for? I'll be dead, right? Like, it's not going to make any difference to my life, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So when I do things, I never think about legacy first. If that is something that happens, you know, sometime posthumously, so be it. But it's never been on the agenda for me that I need to do this for my legacy or this or that. You know, I always think about it as life is an experience, right? And it's there to be experienced. And that is the both the beauty and the joy of having one life, right? That you can live this brilliant life, you do whatever you want and have the choices to make, you know, all these different decisions that will impact the direction of your life. And you have some relative control over that. You may not control 100% of it, but you do have a good factor of influence over where your life is going to go. And at the end of it, it's all over, right? And so, you know, some people might look at that and they go, "Oh, it sounds very futile, Johnny. Like, why do I need to live life then?" And I think, you know, that's where the beauty of it is that it's for you to experience and it's for you to find where that joy and where that enjoyment is, right? That, you know, in these pursuits of all these different things, you know, and I think it's important that, you know, when you're young, yes, you absolutely need to have these lofty goals. But once you've reached those lofty goals, you're going to realize that they didn't change you, right? So I guess, you know, to segue, I want to go into some of those stories that you had just mentioned about some of the things that you pushed yourself to do, trying to chase that sense of fulfillment from, or that love from your dad, and trying to get that acknowledgement. Because, you know, for me, the experience was like I got to this position in my career that I thought, you know, was going to be 4 years away, and I got there early, like 4 years early. And once I got there, it was just like, and then what? Did I sell myself short? Like, you know, did I just put all my hopes and goals and dreams on this particular role. I got there and my life didn't change one iota, right? Like nothing changed. I was at work every day. I worked my butt off, and, you know, getting this title didn't make me any happier. So it was like, you know, it sort of brought me to this point where I realized, oh, having a goal is sort of semi-bullshit, right? Like you need to have one, because without that, you're never going to push yourself to achieve anything, right? But then the next part of I guess the next part of the journey, I would say, is like, you know, realizing that, you know, once you got there, well, it was never really about the goal itself. It was about that journey of getting to that goal, because I look back on the hard work that I put into it, and that was the part that I'm most proud about, you know, that I put in this effort and put in the work and the study and the experience, and trying to get the hours of work experience up to get to that opportunity. And they're the things that I'm proud about, that, you know, like I fit a lot into a short amount of time because I was chasing a goal.
Yes, looking back, I would say, I didn't know this, but I would say now the next level perhaps is to have goals set along with life purpose, or that you're really passionate about. Because then probably achieving those goals, whatever they are, is giving you more joy. And I would say, if you are at the right place, in some way you are contributing to people's lives, environment, businesses, with something that you are best at, or gifted or talented at.
Yeah.
And I think that would be different than getting the house, the boat, the overseas holidays, all of that. That would not satisfy you that much than really finding out who you are, and have that still unknown and uncomfortable place that, how far I can go, how many lives I could help, or what kind of book I could put out that creates an impact, because that really comes from me, or from my experience. So that's what popped up for me about goals, because I have been for 20 years on false path, false goals, constantly working my butt off, and realizing that, well, I screwed it up again.
Well, let's talk about some of those goals. So, what you mentioned a mountain that you climbed. So, what was that?
It was Mont Blanc. It's the highest peak in Europe.
Yep.
I think it's 4,800 and something meters. And it was a little expedition. And I think somewhere along the line, I decided that I would test myself. Maybe out of proving to my dad. I have that really strong feeling that I was still proving myself to my dad. And then, we climbed it. It was sleeping up at 4,200 meters. It was, not that extreme, but, ropes and ice axes and a bit of challenge. So, it was fun. And I did, climb smaller peaks in Europe as well, which, European Alps is a wonderful and beautiful place. I really recommend it to you. And there were other strange and extreme challenges that I put myself to. And once just out of Vega, I just decided that, against my business partners, I decided I will just swim Lake Balaton across 5.6 kilometers. But I never swam 100 meters. And they came as well because they wanted to see what's going to happen to me. And I think it was still the anger that I was carrying. I started to swim with them. And I thought, well, I'm doing well. These guys are, and I knew they were playing water polo. And we are, swimming out of the harbor. And then they just once said, it was great to warm up. Now let's start swimming. And I'm like, what?
You thought you were already kidding.
And I've never seen them again. it was 200 meters in this kind of race. The race was about finishing it. That was for me. So I never seen them again, and I was slowly hoping that the current will carry me on the other side. And I was like floating, and at the end I could only just use my wrists and my hands to slowly push myself. But it really helped me to grow.
Yep.
And really stick with it.
Wait, so okay, how long did this end up taking you? This 5.6 Ks.
It was 4.5 hours in the water.
4.5 hours in the water.
I was absolutely done.
Yep. And what was the water temperature? Was it warm, cold?
It was about maybe 23, 24 degrees.
So not too cold.
It was not too bad, but halfway of this kind of race, a cold front came in. So it started to get choppy.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even thinking of, I should really wear Speedos,
Yeah.
I had these fancy shorts with proper pockets that was filling up with water. I didn't even have goggles.
Yeah.
So I was, red-eyed, just hardly surviving.
Yeah.
And hoping through this choppy water to get there, and then hoping that this finish line, which was on the other side of the lake, would come any closer. And it was just not happening. It was absolutely smashing me.
Yeah. And so, you would, like, when you're making very slow progress, you would have had a lot of time out there thinking about life, right? Like, so what would have been some of the thoughts going through your mind?
You can imagine, like, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah.
Why am I punishing myself for?
Yeah.
Oh, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
But I had that question recurring for 30, 40 years. And it was an experience. And I believe in many ways, if life is a collection of experiences, then it wasn't for nothing.
Yeah.
Because I could have been sitting at home watching TV.
Yeah.
But I tested and tried myself whether I can do it.
Yep.
And I think it builds you. It builds your inner confidence when things get really tough. And it did.
Yep.
Later on in my life in many ways.
Yep. Okay. So, well, let's talk a little bit about, so where did you move after Hungary? Did you go to university?
Yeah, I did university, and then I ended up in banking.
Okay. So what did you study at university?
It was College for Foreign Trade and Business.
Yep.
And I chose the faculty of finance and stock exchange. To be honest, I had no clue.
Yep.
What I want to do with I was so disconnected. And I have to admit, I looked up where they pay most. And I said, well, I don't know what I want to do with my life.
Yep.
Then it's better if I earn money and don't know what I want to do than just earn average or below and not sure what I want to do. So it was a completely wrong
decision
formula to live life. And so I worked in banking, and then I became a fixed income broker for the next 4 or 5 years. It was amazing. I could, I have this budget to spend on clients. I traveled a bit around Europe and seeing my banking clients in London, Paris, and in Germany.
So what bank was that with?
It wasn't a bank. I was a fixed income broker for the last 4 years.
Yep.
So I helped traders at banks to trade Hungarian government securities, bonds and treasury bills. I was just kind of matching the prices as a broker.
Yep.
It was fun.
Did you, and I guess, what did you learn? Did that teach you a lot of things about finance and I guess how the financial world works or the trading world works?
Yes, it did. And what's more, it really I could learn how to build rapport, how to really connect with people. So they ended up trading with me rather than searching for better prices on the market. I think that is one of the most useful or most important skills today on this planet, to build relationships and have rapport Massive rapport.
And so I guess, you know, for you, what was your style? Like, how would you generate that rapport?
Well, I started to just invite my clients, out of the office to do things together.
Yep.
Whatever they were interested in. At times it was go-karting.
Yep.
But sometimes creating events.
Yep.
That they were, I even took them out into the red light districts if that was
What they wanted.
what they wanted. And I have kind of assisted all these transactions.
Yep.
And I understood that brings us turnovers and business. So
Yep.
I just and at times it was connecting through a beautiful restaurant. It was a dream job for a 20-year-old. And at times, of course, there was a lot of drinkings and partying.
Yeah, that sounds like a great time.
Yeah, and a wake-up call came 4 or 5 years after.
Yep.
When I seen that this just not going to lead me anywhere.
And what made you think that? Because you would have been making decent money, you got a great lifestyle. When you say it wasn't going to lead you anywhere, what were you feeling like was missing?
From early childhood, I was kind of stuck in Hungary in many ways.
Yeah.
And to this country and its restrictions. And I wanted to see the world and experience, other cultures and connecting to strange people.
Yep.
And in office jobs in Hungary, you got 3 weeks the most per year.
Yep.
As a holiday that you can use for whatever you want. And somehow this seed of freedom started to break through my mind. And there was this girlfriend that I had at the time, and she said she can't handle this Hungary anymore. She wants to move to Ireland. And I thought, this is the time.
Yep.
I've got a bit of romance in this thing, and I have this drive anyway to experience living overseas. Actually, I could have moved to work in another bank, maybe in London or somewhere there. I think I just wanted more. I realized that life must be more than pursuing one profession.
Yep.
And at that time, I realized I'm gonna just change every 5 years.
Yep.
Some major change, and then because that was the presumption, because I don't know what I want to do, I might as well have a diverse life with a lot of stuff happening. So at least I die knowing that I tried a
whole bunch of different things.
This is so simple.
Yep.
This was driving me, and then I moved to Ireland, and I gave up my job, and I worked in a factory. I was packing like green peas in Dublin.
Wow.
And rice and custard powder.
Yep.
And I really did not enjoy.
Yep.
There was all these crews from Eastern Europe. We were this half legal early times of EU.
Yep.
And I did travel around Ireland, and I loved that. Although I understood that this pub culture is really not my cup of tea.
You didn't enjoy the pub culture?
Not when...
You didn't want to get into Guinness?
I've seen too much of it. I lived near the Guinness factory. I lived 1K away.
Wow.
We couldn't even hang out the room, the laundry, because...
Without smelling like Guinness.
It was smelling Guinness.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. And so did you acquire a taste for it, or you never really enjoyed it?
I loved it. I did not drink it much. Probably I had 1 Guinness every 2 weeks from the tap.
Yep.
And that was my fix. And I loved it. Yeah. But I could not see myself keep going to these pubs and and I could see it as wasting time and energy and focus, and it wasn't resonating with me. I knew there is more. There is hiking, there is nature, and I've seen exactly the first part of The Lord of the Rings in the movie there, first and last movie in Ireland.
Yeah,
and I knew my next place is where they shot the film.
Yeah. So after you're going there, then you wanted to go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then came the New Zealand experience.
Yep.
With the same partner.
Yep.
And it was a hard start again, starting from scratch. And she decided to go the easy way with immigration. She just got married.
Oh. What? So she just up and left you just to get married to someone there?
Pretty much.
Wow.
And I found myself on my own.
Yep.
Like at the end of the world, really.
Yeah.
From Hungary. It's exactly the other side.
Yep.
And I was just getting by with licking my wounds of,
that relationship.
And not feeling good enough.
Yep.
That why is this happening to me?
Yep.
Absolute victim. And then I started to work as a food and beverage attendant in Taupo.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I had this crazy job, an airport shuttle driver.
Okay.
Without knowing the city.
Yeah.
I remember those times, early 2000s. Maybe some people had GPS. I didn't.
Yep.
It's not like A to B.
Yeah.
No.
No, you got to know
These
how to get there.
vans have 8, 9 drop-off points or pick-up points.
Mm.
And there was a deadline to get these people on the airplanes.
Yep.
So it was absolutely stressful and demanding because I had the map on my lap.
Yep.
And I was so happy when there was a red light.
Yep. So you can actually have a quick read.
Of course. It was just impossible. The first few months, I just didn't want to be there. But I learned a lot about driving around and about... I couldn't even pick up, from the radio, the two-way radio. They call you your van number, and the same time the passengers want to talk to you and have a chat.
Mm.
I didn't know where I was, and I was hoping that I'll find my way to the airport, and then they want to chat with me.
Yep.
Or a call from the office.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure.
At least you would have learnt New Zealand pretty well. Or at least that city, so.
And we had to drive on the other side.
Yep.
Because
yes, that's right.
in Europe we drive on the
Yep.
right side of the road. So it was massive challenge.
So then post that relationship, did you do any self-reflection in terms of, obviously when you say you're licking your wounds, everybody goes into a bit of a depression when something like that occurs. What was your thought process? Like, I guess, how did you get to the point where you were okay again?
It wasn't easy because I had a baggage.
Yep.
Of, all of these negative emotions about myself and my dad. And basically my strategy at the time, work 6 days a week.
Not think about it.
And just avoid it.
Yep.
I couldn't handle it.
Yep.
And then immigration has really woken me up, and they said, well, you can't even stay in the country anymore.
Yep.
So you might as well find a job in the field of finance.
Yep.
Or you need to leave.
Yep.
So then this impossible mission started where I had 3 or 4 months and I needed to apply for a job and actually start working full time somewhere in the area of finance. But who would employ anyone with a 4-month work permit?
Yeah.
And I was a hunter.
Yeah.
I started to hunt my passengers to
try to get a job.
Someone to help me.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yep.
I did find this $18. I remember it was an $18 run. I hated it, but I found out this woman, her husband was at GE. He was an IT manager.
Oh, wow.
Downtown.
Yep.
And I somehow got into an interview to start working in collections, and then I moved on slowly towards sales and customer service, and I worked my way in no time. It was amazing experience. And then immigration agents told me that you just pack up and leave because you haven't got a chance. Then I decided to apply on my own without external help.
Yep.
And I somehow got an approval to stay and gain residence. So I learned a lot that the goal of what I thought I'll start a new life abroad, this is where I went back to in those times. Why am I here for? What do I want? And I just started to take action towards this outcome.
So then how did you end up getting across to Australia after that?
What happened is after 4 or 5 years, I realized that I just can't seem to connect with people there.
Yeah.
And maybe I wasn't connected to myself. So I can't blame it on New Zealand, although I found myself chasing people for gaining a friendship. And I felt so one-sided.
It's very tiring.
I was reaching out and there was just no reciprocity. And I decided, and I found my girlfriend at the time, who is my wife now.
Yeah.
So we met in New Zealand, that we would just have a trip to, I think, Asia and back to Hungary for the summer. And there I have connected with a few friends, and they invited me into this network marketing business. And we just never got on a flight back. So over the next 4 years, we stayed in Budapest. I started up this business and I was doing my best to thrive.
Yep. So what was the network marketing business? Like what
It was called New Skin.
New Skin.
And there was another one.
Yep.
After that, that was a shopping community.
Okay.
And the wounds, they're not good enough.
Yep.
The self-rejection, it just kept me creating the lack of breakthroughs and results. Although I loved the idea of that freedom.
Yep.
And build a business so you can live an unbelievable life, it did not happen. I wasn't ready, or I wasn't healed from this childhood. You know, that feeling of I can't do it, the self-doubt that was constantly in my head. And when the second business started to kind of drop back as far as income, and I had my first son born, I said, well, I always wanted to travel to Australia, and I thought perhaps this is the time.
Yep.
Because somehow I was convinced that there's a problem with Hungary.
Yep.
Because it's Eastern Europe, and the people has a problem with the head. Who had the problem with the head? That was me. and
it's easier to blame someone else, isn't it?
I was still escaping.
Yep.
And I was escaping, and I escaped to Australia.
Yep.
And then started working hard here.
Yep. So what did you do for work when you first came to Australia?
I started to drive trucks.
Okay.
Down in Botany. Yep. Container trucks. Fairly simple. I had the licenses from New Zealand. And I was isolating myself from everyone else. And this was my rolling university for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I listened to anything under the sun that's about self-development, about religion, about connecting to self, about enlightenment. I was just consuming this non-stop.
Yeah. And so was there anyone notable, I guess, that you listened to that really connected for you?
Yeah, there's a few. Wayne Dyer was one of them. I was listening to some Anthony Robbins, Brian Tracy, T. Harv Eker. There is all kinds, because I was just consuming non-stop.
Yep.
And I didn't realize that I need to take action.
Yep.
I was hooked up on this idea that they will give me the answers. So again, I spent another 7 or 8 years stuck, working hard. I had my second son born, and I've put my relationship and my family, really in an extreme situation where I worked so much, and I realized that the work will not get me freedom. I started the side hustle, trading, and I just didn't get any results. I spent time on it after work, working my 10, 11 hours. I worked another 2 or 3. I was absolutely exhausted, burnt out.
Mm.
My family just saw my body
Mm.
there at the screen,
Mm.
and I slept 5-6 hours. And my wife, asked me one day, we should maybe just, separate,
Wow.
because you just
You're not
don't,
here. You're not
you're
present.
not here. What's the point of this? Then that was the wake up call. And a few times, because I was working night shifts to make more money,
Mm.
I had a serious near miss accidents on M5.
Yeah.
Like really waking up in
Bad positions.
in the lane and falling asleep at red lights and rolling back. Like I was driving doubles, 50, 60 ton trucks.
Yeah. Could have been very bad.
I could have taken out anyone behind. And at one stage I realized that I just I have to put the handbrake on if there's a red light.
Yep.
To then,
In case you fell asleep.
happens, and it did.
Yeah.
Then I woke up and I drove on. So I was into the extreme of the pattern of not good enough and working hard, and then I realized it has to change. And that's when I decided that I will seek and I will not stop until I can get a proper life that I dream about, which is more freedom, more connected to my children and family. And I went from seminar to seminar and to different mentors, and eventually I found NLP and a course, and as well a mentor. I was able to get to the bottom of my limiting patterns.
Yeah. So NLP, for anyone who isn't familiar with the acronym, is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How we kind of process events on the outside and what kind of meaning we associate to it, and how we could actually change it, and how we could process a different meaning and behavior to things that happen to us, or we can actually make things happen and align ourselves, especially the subconscious mind, toward a different outcome. And
yeah, it's and hearing that story as you were just recounting that before, working so hard, it's a very common trap for fathers or husbands, partners in relationships that feel like, if they're the breadwinner and they're there trying to put food on the table, we have this sense that we need to provide. And as a result of that, we work to the extreme to obviously provide for our families. The problem is that when your kids are young, and even for your partner, like, they don't care so much about the money, as long as, I guess if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you're fulfilling, the bottom of the pyramid. You got food on the table, you got a roof over your head, you got clothing on your back. They're the basics, right? And once you start going over the basics, there's probably some people that really, really enjoy those things, right? But then a large proportion, your kids don't care how much money you bring home. What they care about is that you actually spend time with them and you're engaged and interested in their interests, right? And what they learn and being there for them. And the reason why I say this is because, when I was in the automotive industry, it was a common thing where guys, especially in sales, most sales guys will work weekends. And as a result of that, it becomes really, really hard to have a social life when you're working weekends, right? And then, the days that you're off, you're probably off midweek. And as a result of that, you can't really associate with friends, because your other friends that are working, I guess, a normal or a corporate style job, they're working Monday to Friday. So they don't have that time to spend with you at that point in time. And maybe even your partner doesn't if she's working and doing things like that. So, a big trap and a large reason why I think, there's a lot of failed marriages in the automotive industry is because of that. You spend so much time at work. You don't spend as much time with your family, and you sort of lose connection with what was important. Or I guess for some guys, maybe they don't want to go home and they don't want to spend that time with their partners or family. But, if you do love your partner and you do love your family, working yourself to death, thinking that that's going to bring more for your family is actually the opposite of what you should be doing. Once you've established that comfortable baseline, it's now about spending that time, because the trade-off, it's what is it? It'll be diminishing returns. You know, you get past a certain point, you're not getting any added benefit to your relationships with your family when you start working 60, 70-hour weeks, right? But if you just cut back 10 hours and you're at a 40-hour week and you actually have time for your family and spending time with your kids and your partner, then straight away that's an exponential return, because that was time that you weren't providing anyway, right?
Absolutely. I was really slow to realize that. I had another coping strategy. I decided that I will work hard for about 9 months, 10 months. And for a month or two, we'll be just traveling overseas. So I don't even have to think about this job. So for the next few years, this is what I've done. Sometimes I allowed the family to go home and see the family. And I was so focused on my list of goals and my bucket list. At times I just allowed the family to go home to Europe, and I jumped on a plane and I was spending 6-7 weeks in Nepal and India or in South America to kind of fulfill this part of me, which just did not want to be in a job, which this part of me was always free, was connected to people and having fun. This was my way to cope. And then I came back and I was recharged to some extent, but then the hours of the work has just taken me back to the same place. And as you said, Johnny, it's so true that children don't necessarily want you to buy the expensive things. They just want you to be there and love them, be present and be emotionally connected. And I was very slow to realize that. And probably I'm a bit late.
It's not about being
but
late.
It's happening.
I feel like everybody has their own journey to work out, you know, what is important in their lives and not. You know, I'm very big on the idea that no one can make you happy but yourself, right? And, you know, you can have the best partner in the world, but if you don't see the world with the right perspective, you will never be happy, right? And like, so, and this is why, you know, there are people that are perfectly happy being monks, because without desire, you know, desire is probably the cause of a lot of success. It can cause, you know, many great things, you know, many great outcomes can come off the back of desire. But at the same time, all your negative emotions of failure, envy, jealousy, anxiety come from having a desire that's unfulfilled.
Exactly. And the attachment to it. Which is, it's a false path.
So, okay, I'm very curious, because, like, personally, like I've listened to talks on that are probably covering NLP concepts, but I've never done any personal research of my own in depth into NLP, and I'm sure it's probably been, you know, throughout a lot of things that I've you know, read and educated myself over the years. But I guess, what were some of the concepts about NLP that stood out for you when you were going through that process?
It really stood out to be able to change the programming that runs your life. Because I understood that no matter how hard you work, no matter how much effort you put in, the blueprint that you carry in the subconscious mind, and this is a black box for most people, so people will not have rapport with this mind. It just kind of runs in the background, and what they experience in life, and they probably do not like, is just coming from that blueprint that they picked up probably up to age 12. And if a person is not realizing this, they could be repeating patterns of non-achievement or not getting what they want for the rest of their life. And a lot of people end up there because reading about NLP or knowing how it works is not going to be able to help. There needs to be, I would say, a really professional practitioner who could take you on a journey into your own mind
Mm.
to then get the learnings about past events
Mm.
where you have picked up those emotions
Mm.
or picked up those decisions that you are kind of really had enough in the last 20, 30, 40 years.
Mm.
And I find patterns that's been running for 50 years in people.
Yeah.
And absolutely they are unaware, because this is all they know about themselves. This is how they know themselves.
Mm.
And this is where NLP comes in, as to become aware of why you're not getting results, why you are running distraction maneuvers, why you are avoiding things, and really crack that code.
Mm.
Because then you can really get to the bottom of things, which is normally to do with emotions.
Yeah.
And it's highly emotional, and every person is wired to avoid it,
Mm.
because the mind thinks of black and white. It's life and death.
Mm. So then for yourself, you know, when did the epiphany come? Like, when did you have this, I guess, moment of realization? Like, did it take months to get to that point? Did it take weeks? Did it take years? Like, obviously it took years, but I'm saying, like, when you started going down this pathway that, hey, you really want to solve this issue, and you found yourself a mentor and you found yourself some people to help.
As soon as I found the coaches or the mentors that could help me.
Yep.
And it's the funny part, it doesn't really take a long time.
Yep.
But to actually commit to it
Mm.
and pay the price
Mm.
to then have one-on-one support.
Yep.
Is that what I was really avoiding? I thought, well, I just go a few courses and see how it changes. Well, the fastest way is just to get someone who has results
Yeah.
and has amazing, reviews behind them,
Mm.
and just connect with him and get it done. It won't take more than, I guess, 10, 15 sessions unless you have major trauma in your life.
Mm.
And that would be the best investments in your life.
Mm. Yeah. I think it's one of those things, a lot of the times people avoid spending money on themselves in that manner because there's a lot of, anxiety around, oh, what if I don't get results? And what if I don't do this? And what if I don't get those achievements? But at the end of the day, if you really do believe it's an investment in yourself, there's only two ways to get around it. You either got to put in the work yourself, right? And really be able to look yourself in the mirror and that's a mixed bag for certain people as well. Like, some people will never find the answers that they're looking for even if they had the map, right? You can give people the map and you can tell people, oh, this is the way you need to go, but they can follow the map and they might still never find the pathway, right? And then, on the flip side, if you do have the help, some people, are just, they can't bring themselves to spend the money. But at the same time, it depends how important is it to you as well, right?
Absolutely. I didn't have the right attitude towards my own growth and evolution.
Yep. So post, I guess, going through that sort of a system, what were some of the changes that you found for yourself personally?
I found peace, understanding myself, what has been running the ship of my life, and really connecting to who I am, to have connection with my own self and connecting to others. It had to come first, connecting to myself.
Yeah.
And that started to create space to then unfold purpose and finding how I fit into life. And I've been looking for that for a very long time.
So have you found do you feel like you found a good compromise in terms of, what life is about?
I think I did at where I am.
Yeah.
I would say I enjoy what I do, as I help as the doctor of self-worth.
Yep.
I really help people to, reconnect, have their voice out, to have leadership and to reconnect to themselves and showing up in a way they want to. This future self just comes to them from the future, and it shows up in health as well as business and money.
Mm.
And I enjoy this, and people tell me that this is where I'm gifted,
Mm.
because I never give up on a client until they give up on themselves.
Mm.
And that's exciting, because this is what I've been studying about the mind for the last 10, 15 years, because I know there's something hidden there that I can't seem to get to.
Yep. Yep.
And with these courses, I'm able to make that change for people.
Mm.
And at times, yes, I use hypnosis. At times I use other healing modalities, and I'm able to reconnect them to who they really are before limiting decisions have happened. Because that self is sitting there waiting to be discovered, and then have that back in life with the joy and with creativity and fun.
Yep. It's interesting when I used to always do a lot of coaching with my staff, and one of my coaching sessions revolves around asking them, what do you believe your core value to be, right? And it was amazing how many people have never even thought about it, and look, if you're, one of my apprentices, who had just left school, and I wouldn't expect them to have put any thought into that. But then, someone who's 50, 60 years of age, you think that they might have at one stage thought about, what are they as a person about? What is something that is a non-negotiable for how this person lives their life? And, to try and boil that into one word is very difficult, because, everybody's like, oh yeah, well, I'm a bit of this and a bit of that. But I always think, when you put these ideas head to head, that's where, there's a pecking order to it, and because I'll give you some examples, because the common one that people like to say, oh, I believe in honesty, right? And honesty is a core value of mine. And then, I always bring up, and this is programming that most people are given when they're young, is that if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it, right? So is that being honest? Is that being, does that still adhere to your value? Because technically, I guess it is, because you're just not saying something dishonest, right? But that was why I took issue, but I don't like that as a core value, simply because, yeah, like it's one of those ones where I think there's better values to have than honesty, right? And if somebody was like honest to their nth degree, absolutely, I think, it can definitely be a strength. And there's no one value that is like the best in the world or the worst in the world. It's all about how you see it and how you use that in your life, right? So, for me, I always talk about my core value as being, especially over the last 5 years, because I believe it would have been different earlier in my life. But when I started thinking about this as a concept, for me, it's transparency, right? So transparency sounds a lot like honesty, but the difference with transparency is that positive or negative, I'm going to tell you how I feel or think, right? And that has its negatives, because, I've lost friendships as a result of that, because, some people are probably not ready for that level of bluntness. But that's just, for me, I'd rather live my life in that kind of a way. And to me, if I couldn't be transparent that I do all of these different things in my life, but they're all a part of me, life wouldn't be worth living, right? And so the stress test for that would be like, some people would say that their core value is they want to be successful, right? And then when you start putting the core values head to head, okay, would you rather be transparent or successful, right? Because people can say, oh yeah, I love the integrity, but what if it came to being, having integrity or being successful, right? A lot of the times people would choose success over one of those values that, sounds great, but at that point in their life, they might not be at a good space in their life where they need money, right? So at that point where you have that pressure that you need to achieve something, you might give up on some of those values that are nice to say and choose the ones that are going to make you successful, right?
Yeah, I agree. I feel, or I see, a lot of people are absolutely not aware of what their values are.
Yep.
Or when I ask them, then what they're telling me and what I notice is really the value in their life is not even
Aligned.
aligned.
Yep.
So what they think their values are and what it really is could be totally different. And this is the work. This is one of the works where one creates them, or we're able to connect to them in a new way and then apply them as far as behavior and showing up. And I think, this is part of NLP as well. And I do help people to shift them if it's necessary. When they are not seeing money showing up in their life, and then I find out it's number 4 or number 5. Then we really just have to change the order. To then have, I would say it even changes the filter in front of their eyes when it comes to a sales situation, or when it comes to looking at life. They start to have the right filter to pick up on those opportunities and really use them to then get what they want.
That's the see, do, get paradigm. You know, what you see determines what you do, and what you do determines what you get. You know, and the example that I often use with that is like, let's say, you know, you're at a dinner party and the person beside you who you've never met before has their back slightly to you, and they're talking to this person that's beside them on the other side. And, you know, if you see that as, oh, you know, this person doesn't want to know me, well, screw them, I'm going to do the same. And you turn around, you turn your back to them, and you talk to the people on the opposite side of the table. So, you know, that's what you've seen. So that's what you do. And what you get is you miss out on that opportunity to meet that person and understand who is that person, right? Whereas if I saw it as, oh, this person's engaged in a conversation at the present moment, so, you know, I'll give it a moment, and then I'm going to try and re-engage in the conversation. So, you know, that's what I do. I re-engage in the conversation at a later point in the evening, and what I get in return is an opportunity to now potentially start a friendship with this person or get to know this person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Another door open.
Yeah. Right. And that applies to, you know, anything we want in life. Like how we see it determines what we do, and what we do determines what we get as a result of it. And I think, you know, that's a nice way to sort of pull it all together. So if people want to find you, how do they find you?
They find me as the Doctor of Self-Worth. I'm on Facebook, and they can find me on LinkedIn as well. I've got a YouTube channel with the same name, Doctor of Self-Worth. I started about TikTok account, and I'm on Instagram. So I'm kind of putting out my message. And I've got a phone number as well if someone wants to ring me, 0434 760 903. And in this social space, I'm pretty sure if someone really wants to get in touch with me, they just need to put it in the search, and I will pop up with this nice little red cross, Doctor of Self-Worth, and I'm happy to have a chat for free. Because I need to know if someone is ready for that transformation, or is this the outcome is something that I can help with, because I get all strange requests about fixing a third person that I may not be able to help you with.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So do you get that a bit where people say, oh, you know, I need your help to fix this person?
A few times. But of course,
without talking to the actual individual involved, it's a little bit difficult, isn't it?
That would be black or white magic, but I don't do that. I just empower people. And I had one lady who said, come to me, she said, well, I want to tolerate better the abuse by my husband.
Wow.
I said, you need to find someone else, because I don't do that work. The only thing I can help you with is to empower you to really step up and be able to
make some hard decisions.
Have the hard conversations, and then you will see different results either way. So when she came back with the proper goal or outcome, now she has a beautiful relationship and more nurturing and loving conversations at home.
All right, wonderful. All right, thank you, Andre. And we'll call it at this episode. Thanks, everyone.
Johnny, I loved it. And I hope to see you again, because you just resonate.
All right, beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.